this London Blitz cover, these banana stamps, and a chocolate Cinderella are all tied together in my thematic exhibit about blood. Hi, I'm Jean Wang, and I collect blood on stamps. I'm a physician, so my main interest in philately is medical philately. I started out collecting stamps when I was a little kid, just like a lot of people. But in the last while, I've gotten more interested in medical philately. I started collecting stamps about blood donation. So I'm a hematologist, so it's kind of connected to what I do medically. But that's sort of expanded into a lot of different areas of medical philately. I was on the Canada Post Stamp Advisory Committee, so it's kind of like the US CSAC. That's the committee that selects topics for stamps and has input on the designs. And I was able to propose some stamp issues as well. So there was an issue of Canadian medical groundbreakers that came out in 2020. That was the first thing I did when I joined the committee, was I proposed that stamp issue, and that took a couple years to come out. And it came out during the pandemic, which was, we had no idea that was going to happen. But there was a stamp on organ donation that came out a few years ago, and there's going to be another stamp coming out next month that I proposed as well. So teaser.
Well, terrific. You have some of your collection here with us, tied to your collecting interests. Please walk me through it.
So I have a thematic exhibit about blood. It tells the story about the history of blood, the symbol, like religious symbolism of blood, ideology of blood, and then it goes through discovering the medical properties of blood, and then the development of transfusion medicine, all the reasons that we use blood, for treating patients. So I brought a few things to show you that I've acquired to add into my exhibit to expand it. The fun thing with Thematic is you can pull material from all different aspects of philately. And as long as you can relate postal aspects of the material to something in your storyline, then you can include it in your exhibit. So the things I brought to show you today, if you looked at them, you would not think this has something to do with blood or blood donation, but you can figure out a way to tie some postal aspect of the item to part of your story, then you can include it in the exhibit. So the first thing I have here, this is a cover from Tonga. You can see there's a lot of banana stamps on it. It was mailed in 1982 from Tonga to New Zealand, and it's franked with 16 2-Ciniti banana stamps. Each stamp has 2 bananas, and that's paying the correct airmail rate from Tonga to New Zealand. And it's a commercial cover. It's sent to a tobacco company, actually. And the stamps are official post. So I don't know if you can see that. So official post stamps could only be used by government departments. It's a nice cover because it's non-philatelic, so it's proper use. It's got the correct rate, and it's using a ton of banana stamps, what we call a multiple franking. So it's a stamp that I can tie thematically to my exhibit because bananas are rich in potassium, and potassium is an essential electrolyte in the blood that regulates blood pressure, and it's important for heart health. So I'm going to use it for that. But instead of just showing a banana stamp, it's nicer to show a cover that's actually got a whole ton of banana stamps on them that had been used, for the purpose that they were designed for. It was 15 stamps in the set. The first 5 were bananas, the second 5 were coconuts, and the top values were pineapples. But for the 1 through 5, 1 Ciniti, 2 Ciniti, the stamps showed the correct number of bananas. So for 1 Ciniti stamp, there was 1 banana, then there was 2 bananas, and then all the way up, the 5 Ciniti stamp has 5 bananas. So they had previous banana stamps, but they were all just a single banana with a different denomination. So this was the first one where they actually, I guess they had a bit of fun.
I think that's adorable. So this is a blood nutrition example.
Yeah, something that you eat. I'm going to have other things like that too, right? Like there's different things that we eat to get vitamins and minerals and in the blood, right? So bananas is a nice example.
Okay.
So this next one here, just a bit of background. So during the early part of the Second World War, the American Red Cross organized what they called Blood for Britain program. It was headed by Dr. Charles Drew. And they collected blood and processed it in a dried plasma and sent it over to Britain for them to help them, support treating the injured. And that program ran from August 1940 to January 1941. London Blitz was overlapped that period. So London Blitz was like September 1940 to about May 1941. And so I talk about that in my exhibit, right? Because it's related to blood transfusion and how we can use that to treat the wounded, especially during wartime. But the only philatelic, the only direct philatelic item that's available that addresses that storyline is there's this U.S. stamp that shows Charles Drew. So I have a tiny little stamp in my exhibit. And I've been wanting to find something bigger to illustrate, the program and why it was needed, and the London was getting bombed, and so I found this cover. So this is a cover mailed in November 1940, so during the period of the Blood for Britain program and also during the London Blitz. And it was sent from Beckenham to Annerley, which is a suburb of London, about 3 miles away, but it took 5 days to get delivered. So it was a local cover. It got delayed because of the bombing, and it actually ended up probably at a post office that got bombed, because there's a purple manuscript line that says damaged by enemy action. So that was written in by the post office, that they found this cover probably in some rubble and it was damaged. And so that's the reason for the delay. So on the back, it's actually been repaired with tape. And so this is official post office tape. It says ER, which is actually Edward VIII. And he was only king for a short time in 1936, but they must have had tape that was left over that they were just using up. So this is, sort of later use of Edward repair tape. It's got the initials of whoever did the repair. And you can see the arrival postmark in Annerley. That was 5 days later. So it was addressed to Miss Tottingham at Bryanstone in Seymour Villas, which actually, if you look online, there's a whole book been written about this villa. And there was a Mr. Tottingham. So this cover is addressed to Miss Tottingham. But there was a Mr. Tottingham who lived at this Bryanstone, who was a master builder, and he lived there in the 20th century. So it's just really interesting, tying it to the people, and it's a cover from the Blitz, and it ended up being forwarded outside London to Bristol, so probably she was evacuated outside London because of all the bombing. So I'm going to add that to my exhibit just to, illustrate this whole storyline about why the American Red Cross had to send plasma to support people in Britain.
Oh, that's very cool. Okay.
And then the last one here is a postcard that was mailed from Switzerland. So Roman's Horn in Switzerland to Berlin. And the stamp that was used was actually not a stamp. It's a Cinderella from a chocolate manufacturing company. So the company was Otto Ruger and Hansi, this little boy with the chef hat. That's the mascot of the company. And so someone tried to use a Cinderella label. It was just an advertising label from the company.
Oh, yeah?
As the stamp, but it got caught. So somebody at the post office noticed that, hey, you didn't pay for your postage. So they put a blue pencil line around it to mark it, and then they've charged it postage due. So the rate was 5 pfennig. And usually when you get caught for postage due, they charge you double deficiency. So they charge you double what you would have paid at postage. So they've taxed it, they put a T for tax, and they've charged it for 10. So you may wonder how I'm going to tie this.
I'm hoping that its chocolate is good for your blood.
That would be a good line. But no, I'm going to... So when people donate blood, blood donation should be a voluntary act, and there should be no commercial value placed on blood donations. So the way I'm going to tie this in, I'm going to use it as a philatelic analogy, where the Cinderella label has no commercial value to pay the postage. So just to illustrate that concept of no commercial value, and you can find these. They're not that uncommon to find things that went through the mail with Cinderella labels. People try all kinds of things. Sometimes they get caught, like this one did. Sometimes they don't. So I have a cover here. I'll just put it over. So this one actually I found at the show here. It's a Canadian cover. It was mailed in 1984, and it's got a label from a stamp exhibition that somebody put on the cover. and it went through the mail. It got postmarked at a sorting facility and got delivered with no evidence that it got caught or charged postage.
So a cheeky stamp collector.
Naughty
pulled it off.
email. Yeah, naughty mail.
Naughty mail. Okay, so sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't, yeah.
All right. So this just illustrates, right, how when you pick a topic that you're looking to explore further and perhaps even exhibit and present, firstly, you write the rules of that yourself, of what counts and what doesn't count.
You write the story.
You write the story.
You write the story. There are people think there's lots of rules with thematic exhibiting, and there are rules, I would say, in the type of material that you could include, but really the only kind of guideline that you need to follow is that the storyline needs to be tied to some postal aspect of the item or the stamp, the cover, whatever. So something that was involved with moving the mail, getting the mail to where it was. So in this case, you can use like a multiple franking, or this was identified by the post office as a damaged cover, and then it was repaired because of the bombing. And then this one here, the Cinderella stand. So these are all related to postal aspects of the material. I mean, I have all kinds of things in my exhibit that have nothing to do with blood, but as long as you're able to make that thematic connection, then you can use it. So you can have a lot of fun in thematic exhibiting. You can explore different subplots and twists and turns, and as long as it's somehow related to the story and advancing the story, then you can find material to tie to that.
And so your exhibit, you have an exhibit here?
I have an exhibit here. It's a one frame exhibit about. So I have my main thematic exhibit, which is thematic about blood. But in the last few years, I've made some one frame exhibits about different aspects of sort of what I consider medical philately.
That's terrific. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for sharing this with us. This is fascinating, and I haven't really explored much in the world of exhibiting thematics. So this has been an eye-opener for me.
Okay, great.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks.